Cam, what's up?
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Good. How are you?
Good.
All right. You made it just in time, man.
Yeah, I ended up going catching a few more green lights and got here just in time.
Cool. No speeding tickets.
No, not today.
All right.
Just when he's swinging now. Though that's thanks to the speed toad.
We were at the PGA show last year and somebody made a joke about that. It was the best, most corniest joke, getting a speeding ticket because you're a speed toad.
Oh, that's funny.
Sam, is this the first episode of our podcast career with our Toad Talk right here?
Yep, first one.
Cam, can you kick us off with our podcast career?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Well, I never thought we'd be hosting a podcast, but here we are. Um, so, Cam Crabtree, fellow speed toad, team toad, professional PGA teacher out of Welshire. Is that how you say it?
Yeah, Wilshire.
Welshire Golf Course in Denver. Been using the speed toad for 6 months or so. We'll get into that. I had no idea that you were an Air Force veteran.
Yeah, I don't put it out there super often.
Well, thank you for your service, sir. And you studied aerospace engineering, is that right?
Correct. Yeah, one of the few golf pros probably with that degree.
I mean, Sam's a doctor, you're an aerospace engineer. What am I doing in this room right now? But anyway, do you want to kind of talk us at a high level, like through your speed toad journey, when it started, what it's been like, how much speed have you gained?
Yeah. Yeah, so I started using the speed toad back in June, so a little over 6 months ago now. I was kind of hanging out. I was kind of on a regression recently of like I was kind of towards 105 mile an hour swing speed, high 150s ball speed, occasionally cracking 160. Now, 6 months later, my PR is 181.4 and a swing speed PR of 123.8.
That's crazy.
Wow. And just following
Uh,
the program.
yeah, so you're obviously in the app a couple times a week. Tell us like, so you compete, you said you competed in like over 20 professional PGA events last year.
Just about, yeah.
So you're playing a lot, obviously. What does that, and you'll even see more of it next season. What does that mean for your game?
For me, I think one of the things I was worried about, and everybody else is always worried about too, is that you're going to lose accuracy whenever you start doing speed training. And for me, it was pretty much the exact opposite. Uh, I don't like to gain speed, your swing has to get better and the sequencing has to get better. So I started hitting the driver better and faster, and now I'm hitting it straighter, hitting it a whole lot further. And really, the biggest part is not just the driver, but I mean, the club that I'm hitting from 200 yards now is much different than it was 6 months ago. And that probably makes the biggest difference in terms of scoring and game performance.
So,
No doubt.
what's your best score ever?
64.
Nice. Yeah, see, good golfer here. So you're saying that it really helps hitting the ball further because then you have less club into the hole, basically. So have you found that to really affect your scoring average significantly?
I've seen the score go down quite a bit this year in terms of like the overall average for the year. I think it dropped like two or three shots in terms of average. Uh, just the difference is like par fives, especially like when one guy doesn't even have a shot as on a second swing, and I'm hitting like a 7 or 8 iron into a par five. It makes a big difference. Whether I'm in the fairway or the rough, I'm better off way ahead of that guy.
No
Yeah,
doubt.
that's phenomenal that a guy at your level can cut off 2 or 3 strokes in your scoring average per year because you're already at an elite level of scoring.
For sure. And it's there, you can always get better and the distance just gets easier. Like statistically, like as you get closer, you will always be closer to the hole on that next shot than if you were further away.
No doubt. Hey, Sam, he lives in Denver. We need to go play in Denver and use that altitude. That would be fun.
I was on
Um, s-
TrackMan last night playing a course, and man, when you get to the sea level, it's like, oh man, I guess I don't hit a 3 iron almost 300 yards anymore.
Hey, but if your competition's playing in Denver, it's all even playing field.
Exactly.
Um, so if you can go back to like 6 months ago, I remember you messaged us originally with, questions about the product. Um, can you like bring us back. And did you have a hesitation or two when you were deciding maybe which speed product to go with, or hesitation about speed training in general?
My hesitation was like several years ago, I got one of the generic speed sticks where it has the heavier and the lighter. And it really didn't have much programming with it in terms of like what to do. So you kind of just Google it and kind of figure it out. And I think my hesitation and I didn't really get a whole lot out of that. And the hesitation is like, is this really going to work for me? You see all the tour pros talk about it now. So I was like, there's something that has to work. And it just made sense to as I looked at it, that watching all y'all's videos of just, hey, swinging with your own shafts is kind of what you have to do, and like just swinging a stick just isn't there. And then there's always the hesitation about the accuracy too, or kind of losing your swing trying to get faster, and it's just gotten so much better.
For sure. Yeah, that's interesting. You touched on just the hesitation of like, is it going to be worth the time I spend? Like, I'm going to put in 2 months of training. Am I going to see any noticeable difference? We often hear about hesitations about injury or the accuracy one. But yeah, well, I mean, is this even going to be worth my time? That's interesting.
Yeah, when there's only so much time in the day to practice, it's like, is this where I should be like using my time? And I've found that this is like how I'm spending most of my time now on my golf game, but it's 100% been worth it.
It's addicting.
Yeah.
Interesting talking about time because I remember you sending us some messages early on about how you almost felt like it wasn't enough at the beginning. You were kind of hesitant of like, is this really gonna help me to gain club speed? Like I feel like I'm doing nothing. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so initially, I was thinking, I was like, man, spending 15 minutes on this a day just doesn't seem like it's enough. Like, it seems like when I go hit golf balls, like if I'm not hitting like for a couple hours, like am I really getting that much out of it? And then I really came to realize it's just like lifting weights. If you can't go lift weights 4 hours a day every day and expect to recover. And then kind of looking back on the data now that I've done so many days of this, I saw that I needed like my best days were after I had at least 4 days in between sessions, and that's kind of what I saw, and no more than eight. So it was kind of finding that optimal window because I just didn't think it was enough. But now that I've realized, I'm like, you don't want to overdo it. That when I am overdoing it, that's when I'm not making progress and when I regress.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. We see a lot of people make that mistake of they're always just wanting more and more, and they think more is going to equal more speed. And like you found out with your amazing progress, it just doesn't really equal that. And you can swing less, and you're still going to gain a lot of speed.
Oh yeah, yeah. It was just as much as I want to try to do it like 4 or 5 days a week, it doesn't work.
That analogy in the weight room is, I've never thought of that. That's really good. Like if I did bicep curls every single day, well, every day I'm going to be doing sub my maximum weight because I'm always going to be exhausted. Same with the speed toad. If you go swing it every day or every other day, you're never going to break through your ceiling because you're never 100% recovered. I know you charted your data really well, which I love. Sam and I are data nerds. Since day one, we track everything just like you. So you found in between 4 and 8 days was optimal. And I think we've talked about it before, where anything past 8 days, your nervous system starts going, quote unquote, to sleep. Um, I've never charted it that way. So between 4 and 8 days, that's cool.
Yeah, because I still had PRs outside of those ranges, but there was much like the significance below two. Like there was like 2 or less days, you saw bigger or less big of gains. Like they were just smaller or non-existent, and all the big ones are all right there in like the center, is what I saw.
Interesting. Leave it for the aerospace engineer to keep very detailed notes.
As to say, I get made fun of at home all the time for really into spreadsheets.
My wife does the same. Like we're planning our furniture in our living room, and she goes, "Do you want to make a spreadsheet about this?"
Relatable.
So one thing we hear about a lot is, yeah, but what about the heavy club? What about overweight, under speed training? I'll call it under speed training. Um, how did you find? Did you like not swinging something heavy? Were you hesitant about that at the start?
I was definitely hesitant just because every other speed company seems to do the opposite of go heavy. But it just makes sense of why train with a heavier club where you're going to be swinging slower? Gaining speed is about swinging faster and not harder necessarily. Elite sprinters are training by running down slopes or on sped up treadmills. So why should I be training up a hill or slow down just to try to pick up speed? Doesn't make sense. And then it also just avoiding the injuries as well. But just like I found when did the last speed sticks, you get the heavier one and you can definitely feel it in your wrists and elbows a little bit more than. And I definitely haven't had any issues for the knock on wood for the last 6 months of any sort of injuries when it comes to this training. So it seems to be working at least in terms of injury prevention.
Yeah, definitely. That's the science behind it, of the torque aspect of how much torque you're generating per swing. And when you're swinging something overweight, even though it's slower, like you're still, it requires more torque to generate that speed. But even though you swing that underweight option, like speed towed faster, like it requires less torque, so it's safer on your body. And that's what you're experiencing in that, protecting yourself, really.
100%.
Over 20 miles an hour ball speed gained, never swinging anything heavier than your driver.
Ever.
And you mentioned the injury. When I was doing 2 years ago before Speed Toad, when I was swinging the heavy sticks as well, my wrists were just on fire all the time. Like it was everything I could do just to not get tendonitis and be on the shelf for a month or two. Because at the end of the day, we just want to play golf. Um,
Not worry about injuries from training.
yeah, exactly. I mean, I can see if I, hurt myself lifting up my 3-year-old, that's one thing, but not from swinging something heavy.
That's a dad move.
Exactly.
That's a dad move. Um, I guess big picture, what's your biggest learning of this entire process now that you're 6 months or so in? I mean, how is it different than you expected, and what's your biggest learning so far?
I think the biggest thing that I've learned, especially this is not just for me as a golfer, but as a teaching professional as well, is that everyone can hit the ball further, and straighter than what they think they can do. For pretty much most of my golf career, pretty much as long as I've been playing, I've always just thought that I was the average to slightly shorter guy, always the second or third ball in the fairway. Uh, and I just thought that I just didn't have it in me to hit it further. That was just who I was and how I was composed. Uh, and now I'm saying that I can hit it a lot further now. Like all the people that I've known that have always hit it further than me, I'm pounding it past them. And as an instructor, I've been introducing a lot of people to speed toad, and every single person has immediately picked up distance at any level. Beyond swing mechanics, obviously, once you get to a certain point, like you're kind of out of room for just improving your swing of how much you're going to juice out of it to get more distance. And this is just the way. You see all these Instagram videos of just do these exercises, do this, do that, and you'll hit it further. It's not that complicated. You just need to do this, just speed train. And that's really all it comes down to. And it's been remarkable just to see how easily it works and how much that I've gained and will continue to gain as I go through this.
That was really well said. Couldn't say it better myself.
We've been trying for a year and a half to word it better than that.
Glad I could think of it.
Jeez, it's a teachable skill. I mean, we can help somebody with their putting, with their chipping, with their approach shots, with their driver accuracy. Yeah, distance is teachable. Um, Sam and I were working with about 30 college kids earlier this week, and the analogy I used was, on the playground when we were 12 years old, there was always that one kid that ran faster than everybody. He was born with crazy fast twitch muscles. We can teach that fast twitch in golf. We can develop those muscles and that skill set to translate to further distance. You're not stuck with what you were born with when it comes to distance. So, Sam, what am I leaving off?
Oh, that's exactly that. One thing, Cam, when you were talking about, you just kind of always thought you were the slow guy. What did it take for you to break through that mental barrier as you kind of started gaining speed? Was there a point where you gained like a couple miles per hour at the beginning and said like, all right, well, I'm tapped out. I can't get any faster now. This was amazing. Or like, would you just walk me through that process?
I think it was just realizing as I was going through, like the first couple weeks are just the rapid progression, and just seeing, I was like, oh my gosh, I was like, this is just going to keep going, and I was like, this is easy. It's not really until recently that I've kind of reached a plateau, and I think a lot of that really just has to do with how cold it is in Denver right now. Uh, in how effectively I can train. But it was just the first time that I went out and played with my buddies, and all my buddies were like, Cam, like you're hitting the ball a lot further and a lot better. And like just putting it past my friends, the buddy that always asked me what I was hitting, he started coming up short when I was hitting the same club. That's when I realized I was like, oh, okay, this just comes down to how much work you put into this, not if you're just that way. Just like he was talking about the kids on the playground, and just I always thought that guy just like he just hits it far because he hits it far. And that's just what it is. Uh, and I kind of realized like there is like some of us start out at a higher point, but like we can all get there. Our ceiling's all a lot higher than we think it is.
No doubt. And you mentioned the cold in Denver. Now that you're 6 months in, you've dealt with some peaks and valleys of the process. Um, Especially now we're filming this in January. Everybody's experiencing cold outside, which just has just slowing effects on your nervous system. Sam, you're the doctor here. Speak to how the temperature outside, the time of year, getting a cold, all that like affects your speed training.
Yeah, for sure. So, like, I remember when Bryce and I used to train every winter, we would always have our winter numbers. So we would hit a number and we'd go, all right, well, in the spring, that's going to be 3 miles an hour faster. So that's good. We'd always add to it just mentally so that we knew that. But when it's so cold outside, our bodies just kind of like bears turn into hibernated states. Like, we don't want to move fast. Everything's sluggish, just like it's cold out. And it takes just that much longer to warm up your body when you're doing it. So even if you're in, just say the heat's cranked up, you're inside, you're still training, your body's still going to be sluggish from all the cold and everything else going on. And then when you're saying like catching a cold in that piece, when like your nervous system is very, very closely tied to all systems in your body, including your immune system. So if you're fighting off something, if you just got over something, I mean, even just things like diet, nutrition, sleep, all that stuff, it all affects how your central nervous system is moving. So winter, get sick, it might take 3 or 4 weeks to come out of that state of being back in that valley. But it's good that you didn't have a whole bunch of that going on. And now you're starting to come into that just based on you've been speed training for a while now. So you got to keep grinding through it. And then eventually you'll see that pop up again.
Sure.
I remember a year ago, Sam, I showed up to your garage on a Monday because that was our swing day. And I had big expectations for that day. I had like prepared, I felt big numbers coming. And I just remember the numbers were just 3, 4 miles an hour off from where I was hoping to be. The next day I woke up sicker than a dog. But so I didn't know my body was already fighting off that illness. But then the next day I was like, oh, well, that makes sense why I was slow yesterday. It's crazy how tight it is. And sometimes you don't even know you're fighting off a virus that you've got going on inside you. Cam, what questions do you have for us, dude? What TED Talk episode or Toad Talk, TED Talk, Toad Talk episode one? What questions do you think the listeners would love to hear answers to?
So we kind of briefly talked about it the other day, but I kind of want to dive into a little bit more. Why can't you go even lighter than what you're doing now? Than like the speed toad of like you got the driver, you got light, and then you got even lighter. I'm sure there's like some logic to that. I'm just curious to hear what that is.
Yeah, so good question. There's a certain amount of carryover that has to happen to make it still feel like a golf swing. So when we were testing stuff, we tested super light, way lighter than 140 grams. First off, it doesn't have enough weight to actually have the shaft flex. So when the shaft's not flexing, it's not acting as it. So you might as well be swinging like an alignment rod or something. Not going to have a lot of carryover. So even though you're moving super fast, there's no direct correlation of carryover. So like sometimes we do work with single arm shaft stuff, just empty shafts, and we can move those things. I can get it up there 220, 240 miles an hour with a single arm. There's not a lot of carryover to the golf swing from that. It's not like you gain a couple miles per hour with that. You're going to get a couple miles per hour with your driver. Whereas speed toad and that perfect 140 grams and that like about 25% difference between your driver head is just optimal for being fast enough to fully have the progress and get that nervous system activation, but it's still a golf swing because anything just outside of the golf swing is not going to have carryover to the golf swing.
Makes sense. It's just like it's just not realistic anymore. It's not useful for your body to do that.
Exactly. So there's different things you can do with lighter stuff as just more training for mechanics sake, like single arm and things like that. But just as swinging, like if you swing an alignment rod and you do that 4 times a week, you're not going to get any faster with your driver because it just doesn't relate to it at all.
Makes sense. All right, and then the one of the other things I've been thinking about that I talk with a lot of my students about, and especially now we're in the winter time when you can't necessarily have a setup outside. How with when it comes to hitting balls, how important do you think that is to do the ball speed training with the speed toad and swing speed training?
That's a good question. I'll start. Sam can finish off what I missed. It definitely is important to it's that last step in translating your speed work onto the golf course and getting those gains into your golf game. What's so individual on that is workload. A let's say a 14-year-old that you're working with might have the physical capability to handle maybe 10 swings every speed session with a golf ball. Um, a PGA professional, 30-year-old grown man, been working out his whole life for golf, might be able to do 50 swings twice a week. So what's a huge variable there is what's the workload? How many swings can the individual golfer handle in that translation from the speed toad routine in the app to hitting golf balls? Um, but it absolutely is very helpful to, again, make sure your speed gains and those feels transfer to your actual golf swing.
Yeah, and I think the second piece to that would be mental, because a lot of people get very, very quick through this training, and then they still don't know how to hit a golf ball with it because they're tentative, they're scared, they've never swung that fast. So they typically will hold back a little bit too much, whereas they can let loose a little bit more. And I don't mean let loose like on the course, you're going to swing 100% all out like you are, but when you're swinging 90%, the base, just say you gain speed, now you can swing 115 miles an hour with your dry driver. But on course, you're only swinging 95. It's because you haven't hit enough golf balls now at that newfound speed. So as you can start hitting more golf balls through speed training with a golf ball, now that 95 jumps up there to, 100, 105, 110. And then when you're on the course cruising, you can sit there at 108 to 110 super comfortably, but you've hit balls, so your brain is used to actually making contact and used to all that stuff.
I found
So yeah, I mean
too
that makes sense.
that's so individual from what we found. Some golfers can peak at 120 miles an hour and play scratch golf at 115 miles an hour. Some golfers might peak at 120 and really struggle swinging more than 105 on the course. Super individual, probably loosely correlated with how square is your club face throughout the entire swing. If your swing has a deficiency where your club face is open, your brain's going to slow it down to try to square it up. Um, on the flip side, if a golfer has a very square club face, the entire swing, probably going to be easier for them to play golf closer to their speed ceiling. And that's where, form work with your golf coach with Cam and speed training definitely, work together.
And then I'm privileged enough that I have teach at a facility where I can be on a track, man, no matter how cold it is, and be inside. For the golfers that don't have that or don't have this set up in the garage or live in an apartment where they don't have just somewhere to hit balls, is it okay for them to hit regular range balls with a radar setup to do that, or do you think that's an inefficient way to do it?
No, I definitely think they can. A lot of people do. Now, you always have to keep in mind that range balls are going to be slower ball speeds. So I would
Right.
specifically try to have more like range numbers. And that means maybe it's tracking club speed so that you don't have to focus on the ball. And just because you're having a bad ball speed day, maybe those balls are really bad at that range you're at. So it's always good to then maybe once a month, once every other month, then you can hop on and hit balls on TrackMan. You can hit indoor, get a good Pro V down or something like that. But that's kind of the difference between where you kind of have range numbers, you have TrackMan numbers, you have on course numbers. It's all just kind of arrows in your quiver of gaining speed. And you just got to know what you're doing that day. Kind of like I said, we had our winter numbers, same philosophy there.
Of just having those
Yeah.
range ball numbers.
Yeah.
I've even seen some people with super, if it's 20 degrees and snowing outside and somebody has a very limited space indoors, but they can swing. I've seen some people hit some foam balls into a gym mat, you know.
Oh,
Um,
interesting.
anything that you're contacting the golf ball, you do your speed toad routine, dry driver swing, and then hit 10 foam golf balls just to help translate hitting something with your driver. It all helps while you can. You got to work with the equipment that you're given and the weather that you've got outside.
Right, because I see the students that get discouraged when they're like, "Well, I don't have access to this," and like, nor do I want to spend, $500 or $600 a month on a membership at one of those places to do that. And then the other question I always get too about it is, how important is the radar? Do you think? Like, do you think you can't really do it without the radar? Like, you don't do it at all if you don't have the radar, or what's kind of your stance on that?
Sam, go for it.
I wouldn't say don't do it at all, but the radar is a really big important piece because you can't feel speed. You can feel effort. So if I'm swinging as hard as I can, I have no idea how fast that truly is until the radar gives me feedback saying that was 150 miles an hour versus 145 on the last swing. But there's plenty of times in our training when we've climbed the speed ladder where our effort is 150% and we are feeling like we are moving that thing and our timing is off, our mechanics are off, something's going wrong. And then we back it down to what feels like an 80% swing. It was 5 miles an hour faster because it's more efficient. So if we don't have that actual feedback of that unit, you're going to think that effort and that hard swing is the fastest swing when in reality it's not. So I think it's super, super important. But with that being said, it's not one of those things that you should just cut out completely and go, I don't have a speed radar. I'm not going to speed train anymore. You can definitely still put in work and still put in reps through it. But then I would suggest going somewhere again, maybe once a month to get some number feedback to see that you are still improving. And that's where also videoing your swing, things like that can be super. I mean, that's free basically to video your swing and you can kind of see what you're doing to work on mechanics while speed training too.
That's awesome. That makes sense. That's kind of I've told some bills like, hey, like this, it's better than nothing. Like you don't have to have the $25,000 radar either. You can. There's plenty of. I started, I think, with the $70 one that I found on Amazon, and that worked fine for a while until I just wanted more data and more information, or just start doing it inside instead of outside.
Yeah, yeah. You'll still experience the fast twitch nervous system benefits because at the end of the day, it's lighter than your driver, so you're still moving faster. Cam, you remember you probably have some of those swings where you'd swing and it didn't really feel all out, and then you looked at the speed number and you're like, holy cow, that was that fast.
Oh, for sure. I still get some of those, or I get the opposite a lot too sometimes. But the ones where it's
Sure.
like, uh, where it feels like I crushed it and it was like 112. But I definitely have seen the ones where I just kind of smooth it to see what happens, and it's like, oh, cool, like that was an easy 170 ball speed. It didn't feel like I was really getting crazy with it.
Mhm. Those are the most almost the most important swings because it tells your brain that was really efficient. Your sequence was really, really good there. And so whatever feel you might have had that swing, you can kind of log that and say, okay, I need to focus on this feel because that resulted in relatively effortless speed for sure.
Right. Yeah, because I'm trying to. One of my things that I'm working on now is getting the speed out on the course, which has took a little bit more time, but I'm really getting there now. It's a slightly different swing. Just like Sam's talked about, whether he has a different swing for his world record swing than out on the course. I'm not kicking my foot out and
Like,
doing everything else while I'm out on the course when I'm just trying to get as fast as I can. So it's kind of hard to find that in between sometimes of like, okay, this is the controlled swing, but still swinging hard. And that's one of the things I've been working on. Do you guys have any like advice for taking that swing to the course without taking your violent swing out there?
That's learning the efficiency aspect of where speed is actually applied in the swing. That's massive because obviously, like you only need to be fast at the golf ball. You don't need to be fast in your whole swing. So once you start putting in a lot of reps and starting to figure out exactly where your power elements are coming from, that'll help you develop that on course swing because you'll know, okay, I really am not getting any power from kicking my leg out at the end. It's really just dispersing energy. So how can I disperse energy a little bit earlier in the swing without losing club speed? And that's where you can really match kind of your all out crazy wild swing to your on course swing and not lose a whole bunch of speed, but it's way more controlled.
That makes sense. Would you even think that like bringing like the PRGR out there on the course would be a good play just to kind of see what it's actually looking like on the course?
Oh yeah,
for
100%.
sure.
Yeah.
Because
For
now that I've
sure.
been playing inside a little bit, you're starting to see what the ball speed numbers are on when you're playing with your buddies on the course. It's like, okay, I should be doing this outside too to see what I'm actually hitting on the course. So you're just guessing based on what it's rolling out to.
Hey, you're a
Yeah.
spreadsheet guy. More information, the better.
Oh yeah. If I could just
For sure.
log everything, I would be in heaven of just know every detail.
If only there's more time in the day.
Exactly.
So, last
Awesome.
thing, Cam, what is next for you in your speed training journey? What's kind of the next mark? Because you started off really slow and now you've cranked up really high. So, are you stopping or you keep going? Like, what are you doing next?
Great question. My original goal was to get to 185, and I'm still not quite there yet, and I'm hoping to get over that hump probably any day now. But the one that I haven't really said too much about is I really want to get to 200 miles an hour as my goal. Uh, Not to be able to swing on course at 200 miles an hour. I think that the data started to show that no one at this point and drivers aren't really holding up to doing that on the course yet. I want to be able to max out at 200 so I can be in the 180s, the 190s on the course, and really, not that I want to be longer for my own ego, but just to be, I want to be longer than everyone that I play against, and I think that just makes a massive advantage. Granted, in Colorado, but I'm at a point now where any par four that's less than like 365 is in range, and that just makes the game a whole lot easier. I've got a par four here at my course, Welshire, that it's 315 from the back tees, and I want to be able to hit that with a 3 iron, not with. I was hitting it with a driver last year. Uh,
Love it.
so I mean, that's just keep getting more distance is really what I want because I'm enjoying hitting the 7 iron from 200 yards. That's nice. It's just I just want more of it. I think this is like the the biggest strokes gain that I can get is just by getting more distance because I'm a good wedge player. So if I can just get to that range every time, that'll make it a lot easier.
Geez, remind me not to play against Cam come April. That sounds like I'm going to lose $20 pretty quick.
Honestly, if I could just get to your numbers, that's the goal. You talk about where you're at on the course. I'm like, that's where I want to be.
I'll give you 5 miles an hour if you give me your wedge game.
Yeah, that's a good trade.
All right, well, we'll wrap it up. Kim, where can people find you if they want some coaching?
You can find me either on PGA Coach. You can look me up as Cam Crabtree or find me on Instagram, uh, PGA underscore Cam Crabtree. That's me. Hit me up for coaching. I do indoors, outdoors, so 365 days a year, rain or shine.
Instagram, any other platforms? Are we on Instagram?
Instagram's the main place there, and the PGA Coach is the easiest way to find me, and you can book lessons directly through there or message me, or just if you're around Denver and you play at Welshire, feel free to stop by and say hi. I seem to live here, so
Awesome. Well, thank you, man. We appreciate your time.
thank you. Thanks for everything you guys have done.
All right, see you guys.
Take care.
Bye.